It seems like every week a new brand is coming out with a new shoe and it's got a new name, new technology, and new use case. So how do you decide what running shoe you should get and what are the actual categories of running shoes? Let's break it down. What's up everybody? I'm Eric McIntyre, aka Rad Dad Bod, and you're watching Rad Dad Bod TV, where we review and talk about running shoes. Now, if it's your first time watching one of my videos, you may notice some timestamps in the description below. Feel free to click around, jump to different parts of the video, but if you do, I would sure appreciate it if you came back and watched the full video when you get a second, as I put a lot of time and effort into these to make them as comprehensive, as educational as possible. If you're a returning viewer and you're not yet subscribed, I would sure appreciate if you hit that subscribe button and even enable notifications so you learn when new videos are coming out. And as always, I sure appreciate any type of like or comment. Let me know what I can be doing better for you guys in these videos to make them more educational, more informative, and help me continue to level up and just become a better overall shoe reviewer for each and every one of you. Now, before I get into categories of running shoes, I do want to throw some disclaimers out there, which are a large portion of the shoes that you will see behind me and potentially ones that I will hold up or talk about may have been gifted to me for the purpose of review by the brands. I never accept any cash compensation for the shoes that I receive for review. No one gets to watch the videos beforehand. No one gives me talk tracks or anything like that. All thoughts are entirely my own. And the same is going to be true for this video. No one asked me to make this. No one asked me to hold up these specific shoes or anything like that. This is just a video that I thought would be helpful for the running community. And so again, there may be shoes that I showed today that I was given for free, but I have not been paid, nor will anyone watch this video before. Now, with that out of the way, let's talk about running shoe categories. Now, historically, running shoes really only fell into two categories for the most part. You kind of had your daily use shoes, and then you had your speed or race shoes. The same is somewhat true, but within each of these two categories, there seems to be a lot of new subcategories, and that's mainly what we're going to spend our time talking about today. What are the subcategories, and who might prefer to use the different subcategories, or what are they actually built for? The goal of today's video is to hopefully break that down so that each and every one of you can walk away from today understanding a little bit more about how to choose running shoes and what to use them for. So for the most part, again, like I said, I still think that every shoe falls into either a daily use shoe or an up-tempo or speed-oriented shoe. Within the daily use category, there's really only two, maybe two and a half, we'll call it, subcategories of shoe. The first is going to be kind of your standard daily trainer, and typically these come in at like 8 to 10 ounces overall. From a foam standpoint, they're not gonna be like super high stack, though the average shoe is more high stack than they used to. I'm not gonna give an exact range because it does vary by brand what they consider kind of their standard daily trainer versus like their max cushion daily trainer, which is the next category we'll talk about. But for the most part, it's going to be a slightly lower stack height overall. Now, the foams themselves are usually not going to be what would be known as a supercritical foam or a highly responsive foam. These foams tend to be a little bit more supportive, sometimes even firm, and they'll give you a lot of what we'll call ground feel underfoot. Again, this will vary by brand because some brands tend to have softer foams and some tend to have firmer foams, but for the most part, that's kind of what you're looking at from a foam situation. The other thing is that this shoe is not necessarily going to excel in any one type of run, but it's really built to do a little bit of everything. You can take this shoe on a long run, you can run easy in it, you can do intervals in it, or tempo or threshold. Either way, it's gonna do just okay at every single one of those things. And again, there's probably a shoe that is better suited for each of those workouts, but there's not going to be a shoe that can handle everything quite as well as most daily trainers. So for the most part, if you need one shoe or you're only trying to buy one shoe, my recommendation would generally be find a daily trainer or just a standard daily trainer. Just to round out this category, some examples of a standard daily trainer are going to be like the Nike Pegasus, the New Balance 880, maybe even the 1080, again, depending on who you ask, the Asics Gel Cumulus, the Hoka Clifton, and the Saucony Ride. Now, category 1.5, we'll call it, is just a stability shoe, and a stability shoe is generally a standard daily trainer with some type of support element. Support elements can include like a firmer foam, generally on the medial side. Maybe it will have these stiff guardrails or different things that run along the shoe to keep your shoe from really like rotating in. And that's the general goal of a stability shoe, is it prevents overpronation or over rolling in of the ankle. The unfortunate thing for most people who need some overpronation correction is that stability shoes, again, only really come in standard daily trainers with very few few exceptions. Now, category number 2 is going to be the max cushion daily trainer. The difference between this shoe and maybe the standard daily trainer is simply that this shoe is more cushioned underfoot, and it's generally going to be maybe a little bit softer than your standard daily trainer. You're going to get a lot more plush in the upper a lot of times as well, so that means like a thicker tongue as well as just more cushion throughout. They can be a little bit warm, and they are definitely a little bit heavy. For the most part, you're probably looking at the 9 to 12 ounce range. So like a standard daily trainer, these shoes can do a little bit of everything, but because of the added cushion and because of the added weight, then they are going to feel a little bit slower, a little bit more weighed down than the standard daily trainer counterparts. As such, many people use these for kind of recovery, easy runs, maybe long runs if they feel like they don't have enough cushion underfoot from a standard daily trainer when they're going for longer mileage. There's also some people who just prefer to have more cushion, and they use these as kind of a standard daily trainer, and that's totally fine as well. The amount of cushion that you want underfoot really just comes down to preference. Some examples of shoes in this category would be like the Hoka Bondi, the Ghost Max, the Saucony Triumph as well. Now, as of 2024, I should say that some of these max cushion shoes are getting some supercritical foams or element of supercritical foams in the shoe. Again, all that means is slightly more responsive shoes or slightly more responsive foams. But generally, a max cushion or like a standard max cushion daily trainer is not meant to go fast. It's just meant to give you that extra cushion and support underfoot. So those are your daily use categories. You have your standard daily trainer, your stability shoe, and then your max cushion daily trainer. Any other shoes outside of those categories are pretty much for some type of up-tempo or faster work. And that really does range anywhere from kind of like your tempo threshold or like upper end moderate paces all the way to your super fast paces. Now, for the most part, I would say that within this speed or up-tempo category, you kind of have 3 subcategories and then 2 subcategories in 2 of them. But to try and make this video a little bit easier to understand and more simple, we're going to try and condense that. So we'll talk about the 3 subcategories of the kind of up tempo and speed section, and then talk about what variations, almost like the stability variation, exist within that space. So first up, you have your lightweight trainer, sometimes called lightweight daily trainer, sometimes called up-tempo trainer. These actually tend to be a little bit more minimal than your standard daily trainers in terms of overall cushion underfoot. But the difference is that the cushion underfoot tends to be some of that supercritical foam or more responsive foams that we talked about. The other thing is these shoes tend to be very, very lightweight, usually ranging in like the 7 to 9 ounce range. These are just going to feel incredibly light on foot and are just really kind of a stripped down shoe that allow you to go fast and feel nimble. Now, these shoes are still built to do a little bit of everything, and historically these are kind of your racing flats or the shoes that a lot of people would race in. They have some of the pace versatility of a standard daily trainer, so they can go easy if you want them to, but for a lot of newer runners nowadays with so many cushioned options out there, they may prefer to go with more of a standard daily trainer or a max cushion daily trainer for daily use as opposed to a lightweight or up-tempo trainer. For me personally, this is my favorite category of shoe because it's light enough and easy enough on the feet that I do like to run in these daily, and that's totally okay and totally doable. The other thing is these are very, very responsive, so they're great for interval workouts, great for tempo or threshold workouts. Where you may suffer a little bit is just because of a lack of overall cushion or stack height. They may not feel as supportive as needed for kind of your longer efforts or even longer, faster efforts. Now, some shoes that fit into kind of this lightweight up-tempo trainer category are going to be the Nike Pegasus Plus, the Brooks Hyperion 2, the Hoka Mach 6, the New Balance Rebel V4, and others along those lines. Now, category 3.5, we'll call it, or a subcategory of that up-tempo lightweight trainer, is the plated lightweight trainer. Now, the difference here between kind of your standard lightweight trainer versus the plated lightweight trainer typically comes down to some type of stiffening element or plate within the midsole. Now, this can be carbon fiber, this can be nylon, this can be plastic or Pebax. It doesn't really matter, but what that does is it tends to give a little bit more structure to the shoe and make it a little bit more rigid. Now, on top of that, typically these shoes are going to have an even more responsive foam, oftentimes the foam that is in actual marathon racing shoes. This is probably the most versatile category of shoe in my mind, because with the combination of some type of plate or stiffening element and then a really super responsive foam, it makes these shoes very fast, but also very comfortable and cushioned. That means that oftentimes you can do your long runs in these shoes, you can do your tempo runs, your threshold runs, your intervals in these shoes. But the place where these shoes do not thrive is kind of those easy daily miles. I've talked to a few physical therapists and running coaches as well about this, and typically it's not recommended that you use a plate for daily use, even if it's in kind of the lightweight package and it's maybe a more flexible plate than a carbon fiber plate. These also tend to be maybe a little bit heavier than your standard lightweight trainers or your lightweight up-tempo trainers, but what you give up in weight, you actually get back a lot of times in speed just from those more responsive foams. Examples of this shoe, as you can see here, you have the Endorphin Speed 4, the Wave Rebellion Flash, and then the Magic Speed is another example of a shoe that fits this category. Now moving on to category 4, we have kind of your max cushion up-tempo trainers. Now honestly, there aren't a ton of shoes in this category. The category is still growing for the most part, but what you're really seeing here is oftentimes you're going to get a foam that is responsive, that is very bouncy, but also generally pretty soft. And then you're going to see like a weight range that really varies, anywhere from like 8 all the way up to 12 plus ounces in these shoes. A lot of these will have an illegal stack where basically there's more than 40 millimeters of foam underfoot at a certain point of the shoe. And for professional runners, you can't use a shoe like this in racing. If you're an average runner and not a professional like myself, then you can totally use these for racing and no one's going to complain about it. Now these shoes can do a little bit of everything. Some people actually really like running easy runs in these shoes just because they are oftentimes very bouncy and very soft. But they have a little bit more versatility than kind of your standard max cushion trainer because of the foams, again, underfoot. They're just going to be a lot more responsive. This shoe in particular has 2 types of foams, where the one in the forefoot's going to be a little firmer and is going to give you a little bit more propulsion. And that's kind of the mindset of these shoes, is oftentimes they're made for like bulk marathon miles, like long run marathon miles, where you're going to be running a little bit faster than your normal easy pace, but you're going to be going for a long period of time and you just want a lot of cushion and protection underfoot, but you don't want to feel slow. So really, I would say that these are like marathon pace and above in usage, but probably don't go quite as fast as like actual speed intervals or anything along those lines, because the bulk is just going to feel a little bit clunky. Now other shoes in this category, the Asics Super Blast 2, this is the Brooks Glycerin Max. There's not a ton in the non-plated like up-tempo max cushion style shoe, but I suspect that we're going to get even more of these in 2025 and forward. And then category maybe 4.5 is going to be just the up-tempo max cushion shoe with a carbon fiber or some type of plate in it. Just like we have kind of the lightweight versions, you also have the max stack or the max cushion versions. Now these shoes are going to be very similar to the max cushion counterpart. The only real difference here for these is going to be that they're going to have that same stiffening agent in the midsole or in some type of midsole there. You can see that these are the New Balance SC Elites. I actually just got them today, and you get a lot of stack underfoot. You get a carbon fiber plate as well, or a potential plastic, nylon, maybe fiberglass plate in there. Now, as such, I would say that these tend to feel a little bit faster than the that Supermax cushion up-tempo trainer. And even though they have a little bit more weight, they are going to be a little bit snappier again because of that plate. So really, these are going to be most useful for those marathon style long runs or those tempo or threshold runs where you're going for a long time, so you want cushion underfoot, but you're trying to run high-end, moderate, or fast, and so you still want to have a little bit more pop in the shoe. Examples of this would be the Kinvara Pro, the SC Trainer, the Skyward X, and the Neo Vista. Now our last and final category is the Supershoe. The Supershoe takes essentially the best elements of every shoe leading up to this, and it tries to package it in one shoe. Every brand has their own take on this shoe, but for the most part, most brands are trying to make this shoe very lightweight. You typically get very thin uppers, they're very breathable, and then they put the most explosive, most responsive foams underfoot, and they almost always have a carbon fiber plate in the shoe for maximum structure and stiffness to give your foot a lot of pop coming off of the ground. A lot of these shoes are going to be fairly high stack, but generally the geometry of the shoe is going to be a little bit more sleek. And the main knock on these kind of super shoes is simply that they are just going to lack a lot of the durability of other shoes, and then they're going to be really aggressive and potentially harsh on the foot. So you really want to save most of the miles for these shoes for your actual races or a couple of key sessions in training, but they are definitely not a shoe that I would recommend using probably more than 3 times a week if you're like very, very experienced. And if you're fairly new to running, you may not even want to use one of these. When it comes to actually racing, you can race in any category of shoe that we talked about today, even the max cushion daily trainers, because the most important thing is that your feet are comfortable and you feel good and you're capable of crossing the finish line in that shoe. Some people who try and wear super shoes without having gotten used to them end up with injuries and foot pain and different things along those lines. And so again, if you are going to try super shoes, just make sure that you get a couple of sessions in them in training and don't show up on race day with a brand new pair unless you've tried that exact model beforehand. As far as examples of super shoes, we've got most of them on the wall. Endorphin Pros, you've got Alpha Flies, Mizuno Wave Rebellion Pro, SC Elites, you've got the Cloud Boom Strike, Metaspeed Sky Paris, Cielo X1, even the Adidas Evo 1, Pro Evo 1 over here, which is a single marathon use optimized racing shoe. So these really are kind of the pinnacle of the running shoe world. But again, they're not for everybody necessarily. It's not that you can't use them. It's just that they are aggressive. So just be aware and make sure you do your due diligence. Often spend the $300+ that they may cost you. So there we go. Those are our categories of shoes. Again, my general rules of thumb are if it doesn't have a plate, you can it on the daily, and if it does have a plate, then you probably only want to use it 1 to 2 times a week. So there's going to be some bleeding over into each of these categories as we outline them, but how I would describe shoes are as follows: standard daily trainer, max cushion daily trainer, lightweight Uptempo, lightweight plated, max cushion Uptempo, max cushion plated, and super shoe. So what's your favorite category? Let me know in the comments below.